Good evening. This is John Bushka. I want to talk this evening about a, a disc I received, a DVD I received, a um, some early interviews that Paul Rosenfels did, apparently in his old apartment, back in I think about even before the Ninth Street Center opened in 1972 in the East Village in New York City. That's what he looked like. He was a little bit younger then. I actually had a therapy session with him on December the 4th, 1973. It was before I moved into the city. And I had been going to the center from New Jersey for about 6 or 7 months. Um, but um, there are a couple of other photos here. Um, that's another picture of him the second of the two videos was a little bit older. I think that's probably in 1973 or 74. That's Jürgen Schmidt. There's another picture of him with his books in his apartment. That's a picture of the DVD. And I just thought that was the entrance of the center, and that was the center from East 9th Street back in well, I took that picture in 2004, but that was the same place back in 1973 on East 9th Street. And um, the video it simply is called a Paul Rosenfels anthology. I believe there was another one. I believe there was another video called that I had in the early 2000s, maybe the late 90s. I cannot recall whether it was a VHS tape or it was an actual DVD, but that video was taken at the 9th Street Center with the meeting room, in the main reading room that it had, and there was a second room behind for other talk groups. In the back part of the room there was a kitchen where we had the potluck suppers and where I sometimes had to volunteer on Saturday nights. But like in 73 and 74, 75, I stopped after the middle of 75. In both videos, Paul talks about similar things. He mentions having been in the army, which I had forgotten that he was, and he talks about some of his early romances. He was not, he was not real picky about what people looked like I am. He was quite open to sincerity in his relationships. He talks about having been in the army, and he talks a little bit about the fact that, and this is back in the 70s and 60s, that there was no way the military could deny that there were attractions, that there were men attracted other men within its ranks. He did say that quite openly in a couple of the videos, long before gays in the military was out in the open as an issue as it became in the 90s. He talks about the polarities a lot, and that civilized men appreciate, in other men, feminine qualities, and women masculine qualities in other women. Even though that doesn't undermine the idea that somebody is a man or a woman according to their biological sex. And he believed that his polarity theory was only for personal growth only. It wasn't intended to be used as a political identifier. But when you combine the idea of polarity, masculine and feminine, with a second axis of subjectivity and objectivity, you have something that sounds a little bit like gender identity. Page 126 of my first Do Ask Do Tell book. Subjectivity refers to the intuitive and sensory facilities, the ability to sense the importance of things or undiscovered connections between them. Objectivity refers to the manipulative capabilities actually motivating or managing other people. The masculine, feminine, and subjective objective axes formed a system of coordinates appealing to a mathematician like me. The intellectual precept could quickly get in the way of deeper understanding through personal experience. Other concepts of personal character expressed in analogs were love for charity, power, faith versus hope, thought versus action, insight versus mastery, truth versus right, that was an important one, teacher versus leader, and honesty or honor versus courage or integrity. And then on page 127, I did say, when I talk about, I say inner identity means to me what makes me tick, how I communicate what in other people turns me on. So that there was the idea of an identity, but it was private, or it maybe was circulated with among your social group, but it was not, again, intended to be used as a political identifier. Um, Creativity and personal growth give one importance to other people, but one becomes significant to other people by actually caring about them or motivating them. One does this with close personal friends and with the achievement of a mild level of earthy, erotic feeling or attraction. The ultimate expression of creativity is to be found in the lifelong mated monogamous relationship with another loved one with full expression of sexuality. There is tension between this ideal of lifelong fidelity and the practical likelihood that two self-actualizing individuals will in time outgrow a particular courting relationship. Beyond the single mated partnership, whether same-sex or not, there are other friends in a close-knit community with whom one interacts out of inner identity. For the creative process to be fulfilled, one must be open to homosexual feelings and drives, even if they are not directly acted out. So that was kind of his, those are my words in my first book in chapter 3, but Paul, that was pretty much a summary of what he thought. And there are two discs in existence now that I don't know where the other one was, and it may have been a VHS. It taken at different times that illustrate his talking to his students, or he called them students rather, patients. And in one place he mentions that he wasn't allowed to practice medicine in New York in the first video. That was another thing that was interesting. But we have two of these, so if a documentary film ever got made, it would be, this material could be very interesting, even though you would have other issues and licensing and so forth. But there's a possibility this could go somewhere. And I think his ideas are just as important as maybe Judith Butler's. And I do get the idea of performativity as sort of like a derivative of performance, almost a calculus in personal, like calculus, that out of a person's performativity, one gets a sense of their identity, of what they stand for. That does make some sense to me, but it's really problematic. It's been taken as far as it has politically recently. And so I just wanted to make you aware of these two. There are actually two discs of Paul Rosenfels' work, and I'll also be writing a blog post about them. And for this evening, I do indeed thank you for listening.